Imagine it. The year is 1817. The White House had been without a vice president for 2.5 years since the last one passed away. But with the election of the new president, James Monroe, that seat has been taken. This was actually very close to being a different story. Daniel D. Tompkins was just nearly the Democratic Republican nominee due to his overwhelming popularity in New York. Ultimately, James Monroe took the nomination, but because of his popularity, he was an easy pick as a running mate. This story might have also been different if he had had a successful run for governor in New York against the nephew of George Clinton, another former vice president. But the story we're telling is the one where Daniel D. Tompkins becomes vice president and is the only vice president to serve two full terms in the entirety of the 1800s, which is really surprising considering there were 25 different men to take that seat. There's a couple reasons it's particularly surprising that Tompkins made such a record. And that's because when he actually became vice president, he had already was suffering from very poor health. He had taken a fall from a horse, and that left him in a very dark place, both physically and mentally, as well as financially. The main reason for his financial woes come from the War of 1812. As governor of New York, he dipped into his own pocket to help finance the war effort for the state. But thanks to his lack of records keeping skills, the government didn't feel that they needed to reimburse him for the money he paid out of pocket. And that caused him a lot of turmoil and led him to the drink. All of that backstory was necessary as it leads into the reason of why he wasn't held as highly regarded as vice president. And that was because his poor health kept him out of DC for the most part. That and his alcoholism. And so the only times he really came to DC was to fight charges with the government because they were still accusing him of mishandling government funds during the War of 1812. So it took a lot of time and effort for him to convince the government that he spent his own money to help out. But I guess in that regard, his time that he did spend in DC was well spent, uh, due to the fact that eventually he did get reimbursed for his expenditures. However, the fact that he wasn't in DC being vice president properly meant that he missed out on a lot of debates in the Senate, which is a large part of what vice presidents do, presiding over the Senate. And so it just so happened that while vice presidents in the past, it was more of a leisurely position for the most part, there always seems to be a situation that comes up where it's a heavy one that they need to be part of. And for his tenure, it was the Missouri Compromise, which was a pretty big deal, and he just wasn't part of it. If Tompkins hadn't have had such unfortunate situations compromising his ability to conduct himself as a vice president, then we'd be telling a different story, particularly about how it ended. In addition to being the only vice president to serve two full terms in the 19th century, he also has the shortest post vice president lifespan of anyone who served, and he was the youngest vice president to serve until the late 1850s. Daniel D. Tompkins died in Tompkinsville, where there are streets with his children's name on it, only a few days away from turning 51 and only 3 months after leaving office. Tompkinsville is actually only one of several things named after the former New York governor and vice president, such as a city in Kentucky, a county in New York, and a park in Manhattan. Up next, the man who became the first and one of only two vice presidents ever to resign.